this one, right? So this one, right? So with the false edge of the plate. So with the false edge of the plate. So as Santikan. Okay. Hi everyone. I am Tushar. I'm a guru within the Tersha Tactical Association, which trades with Tersha Kali. And this is my younger brother Tarish. He trades with me every now and then. And today he is my I beat him up basically. Okay, so Santikan. Few days ago I was just revising some of the material for myself, and I was thinking about, there's a Santikan thing, let me go back into it, and I realized that I've learned Santikan in different contexts, in different ways, and I wasn't entirely sure exactly what it was or how to explain it, right? So if someone came up to me and asked me, what is Santikan? I didn't have what I felt was a satisfactory explanation for myself. So what I did was I filmed a little video and I sent it out to a bunch of people and being like, hey, could you help me clarify some of these things? Here are my thoughts. So a huge thank you to those who replied and to those who kind of had a look at it and gave me their feedback. So thank you so much to on Kit, to on Patch, PDTA, to on Jack from PTI, to on Jason Jones from PDTA, Mandela Lamont Glass, and also, of course, can never forget, Sensei E, Tuhan Sensei E, right? And that was a great discussion as well on what it was. And all these things kind of helped me clarify some of the theories that I was starting to have about what could Santikan be. Now, of course, I think what was helpful for me is to go back to the root word of what Santikan is. So Santikan comes from the word Santik. Now, Santik, in general, people are going to say it means to clash, and that's correct. It does mean to clash. So Santik is the clash of the two weapons. But Santik specifically refers to flintstones, not Fred Flintstone, not the Yabba Dabba Doo, but the stones that you use. What? It's true. That's what I thought. The stones that's used to sort of create fire, right? So you strike them. Now, for those of us who've used flintstones, have had some experience with that sort of camping, just to try it out, you know that when you strike flint against steel or flintstones against each other, you're not striking them directly, right? It's not two opposing forces going into each other, which is what our gunting is supposed to be, right? So our gunting is when these two opposing forces strike and hit each other, and that's the action. Instead, Santik, when you clash the Santik together, when you do the Santikan, in that context, you're striking and you're glancing off, and it's almost like you're using that force to, it's based on each other. It's an indirect. It's almost like they're meeting and they're going off in different directions, and that's what creates the sparks that go in. So I think understanding that image, as so often with a lot of Pikini terms, helped me clarify what some of the things about Santikan were and how they manifest differently physically when we're doing them within different contexts. Okay, so I'm going to go into how I'm going to go into this is I'm going to talk about how I first came across Santikan, and then I'm going to talk about the different exposure I've had to Santikan from the instructors who come from different lineages or dialects of Pikini, as it were. Cool. Now, when I first learned Santikan, I learned it within the context of the Dirty Dozen, right? So Dirty Dozen, with the Santikan move, it was this, and then we take slash, here. I'm not getting it right. It's okay. I've got other things on my mind, like what I'm going to say in the rest of the video. Okay? I can't multitask, guys. It's alright. So, that's kind of where I learned Santikan from. And that's what I just assumed it was. Which then brings me to, when I ask this question, right? This version of Santikan with a double stick, I've learned it from within different contexts. So the base context, of course, Santikan, right? Now you'll notice in that one, I'm doing this as a witik, right? And that brings me to the understanding that I realize some of my confusion around what Santikan could be. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I might change my mind in a few days, maybe a week, maybe a year, who knows, right? We live, we learn, we correct, we expand. Okay? So, I realized that a portion of my understanding from Santikan was rooted in the fact that we train with sticks, right? So when we do stick training, one, because it's a sort of like a uniform thing all around, when I'm doing my witik, sometimes it could be this, right? So I need to understand if I'm using a blade, how that's going to apply. So the difference between the shapes of sticks and blades, I think, have also kind of affected my understanding of Santikan. So what do I mean by that? So for example, and the stick is out here, right? When I do this, if I'm thinking of it as a gunting concept where that's closing, I can actually, even in movement, I can deflect others. I can still deflect I can cause this stick to go in some direction that I want, because the contact point, as it's there, you'll notice it's always going to be tangent to the center, right? So when I'm here, I can force that to go that way, right? So again, here, so rather than just going here and here, I can go there. He's not a paid actor. Family doesn't get paid. Okay? Or from here, instead of just doing this, I can deflect it towards him. Now, this is something I think can only be done with sticks, and I do not think that would work with the blade, because with the blade, if I'm going edge to edge, or with my knuckle to knuckle thing here, I'm quite sure that the edge of the blade, the cutting edge, would get caught in the corner, and it's not going to deflect so nicely. Full disclosure, I've not fought anyone with real blades before because I live in a functional society, so no offense. No offense intended, right? So, this kind of thing where I'm able to direct it. So let's say we do like a 1, 2. That kind of thing where I'm able to direct it away. I think I did, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. That only will I can handle with sticks. So that then brought me to two of the answers, or actually quite a few of the answers that were given to me when I asked, okay, what kind of embodies, how does the Santikan exist in the system for you? Okay, and I realized it comes down to this thing of deflecting, which then clarify a lot of things for me. So let's go into the different ways I've learned Santikan from different parts of Makini, from different dialects of Makini. The first time I learned Santikan, as I've showed just now, was under Tuan Tim Wade in BKGO, where Santikan was taught as that part of Dirty Dozen. This is also how I learned Santikan under Tuan Ramel from Bagi Kershaw World Federation. Now, Tuan Ramel is very specific about the terminology, which I really like. I think I enjoy how specific it is, because it helps clarify a lot of things. You can see, oh, this is that, this is that. Okay. So for Tuan Ramel, this is the Santikan. This is the Santikan. This movement, where I'm opening, is gunting. Okay, so Santikan, gunting. In our PTA videos, we show it, I think we teach it as the opposite, the flip, which is, this is my Santikan, or this is my gunting, scissors, and the Santikan, right? Yeah, it's fine. So I think that I understand why one is referred to Santikan and one is referred to gunting by different people. And it comes down to one of the discussions we were having, which is in that clash of Santik with the stones. It's not a direct clash, right? I think a gunting is a direct clash. So for example, this I think, is Santikan. This, where I use both straight to cut the hand, I think that's Gunting. Because I'm not deflecting the blade or his weapon with my weapon. There's no clash in that sense. So, to go back to how Santikan is taught in other ways, now, I also really enjoy exploring Doce Methodos, and in Doce Methodos we have this thing called the Doce Methodos Contradas, right? And from what I call 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 are the bits with Santikan in them, okay? So I think 5 and 6 also potentially, but I need to rewatch that video to double check. So 8 would be my umbrella, and it's described as umbrella into Santikan. Umbrella into Santikan. I think it's that way. Again, I have to watch the video. Right? 9 is my 4-wall into Santikan. 4 walls into Santikan. Right? So that's 8, 9, 10 is when I have that on the 10 is generally referred to as the Fuego Todo Fuego Tirada in Doce Methodos Contradas, right? So this is the Fuego Todo Tirada part. Well, no, Fuego Todo Fuego Tirada is his own thing, but this is the part in Doce Methodos Contradas that is that inclusion of Fuego Todo Fuego Tirada. Right? Now then I asked Tuan what Santikan was in PTI, and in PTI, Santikan is taught as this one, which if you're in PTA, you will recognize as the traverse, right? On this side, right, either like this, or as it comes in, and then I go to, right, when I do my reverse traverse or my pendulum movement. And those are also Santikans. So within PTI, Santikan becomes this deflection, this strike with the reverse edge of the blade, right? So reverse edge to reverse edge. Sorry, not the reverse edge, the false edge of the blade, the spine. Alright, so those are the different Santikans that I've been exposed to, or at least different manifestations of Santikan I've been exposed to. And over my conversation with Tuan Sensei E, where a Santikan is this deflection. So I'm always going to come back, you're going to keep hearing me say things like deflection, movement of the weapon away with my weapon, which is why I think when I have my double stick and I cut the hand directly, I don't think that's Santikan. Right? And I'm pretty sure, like maybe it is, I don't know, I'm willing to be wrong. Right? So that's where all that information is kind of what I've downloaded to my brain. So now here is this is not what I think Santikan is. Here is how I will answer the question of how do I understand Santikan if a student asks me. And it also, I think principally we come down to this glancing strike idea. I'm using that to deflect the weapon before I go into something. This was further sort of clarified for me when I was revising some of the material that I have from a seminar I did with Tuan Phil on the Dirty Dozen. Now in that seminar, we were doing this drill again. However, very, very helpfully, Tuan Phil was not doing it with double stick, as I've always learned it. Tuan Phil for demo, and Chopstick Dog as well for demo, they both had the sort of like polyurethane, polycarbonate, plastic blades, and that was really helpful because I realized when I was doing Santikan for the drill, I was doing it like this, where this last thing I was doing as a wittick to hit with the flat of my blade. However, Tuan Phil's demo, right, deflecting, this is the same, that movement there, and rather than hitting with the flat of the blade, he was hitting with the false edge of the blade, right? With the false edge of the blade. And that sort of married the understandings of it, of what I was learning from Tuan Phil and what I've been learning from Tuan Jack or from tone bill through tone jack, and this idea of, oh, I'm hitting with the false edge of the blade because this, right? That's that, just in a different, flipped on like one of the axes. So here, here, here. And then that sort of helped clarify that aspect of Santikan. I'm not someone who believes that the various two horns, one of them is wrong, one of them is right. I genuinely don't believe that, even though I primarily practice with it, even though it makes it sound like everyone else does. No, right? So I don't believe that. I think all the two horns have taught it in the right way to emphasize that understanding. And this is on my own journey, how I'm going to understand it, and how I honor the people I've learned from, or the material that I've learned from different people. Yeah? So that's where this is gonna go for now. This one, where I'm gonna, and obviously in making a video that for me reconciles a lot of the differences I initially perceived, it's going to end up with a definition that's probably going to, in some way, disagree with all of that. I assure you that's not my intention to disagree. It's sort of how I'm trying to reconcile everything and deal with my perception of this expansion of the definition of Santikan over the years it's been taught, right? So, for example, I'm pretty sure in the 80s and early 90s when GT was teaching, people like Tone Phil, he taught it a certain way, and then in the late 90s and like early 2000s when it was, the times of like Tim, Jared, how he taught it was probably different, and that's what they're passing on, and I think in a really good way. So this is how I'm going to be understanding and approaching Santikan, at least for the foreseeable future, until I change my mind. I think Santikan is, or at least what it's been told to me. So this I know is definitely one of the definitions. It's when I'm using a part of my weapon to deflect the energy of my opponent's weapon as it's coming in towards me, okay? And to get it to go somewhere else. And I'm using a part of my weapon to do that. Now, on his angle, as that's coming in, I'm not trying to meet edge to edge. Even if I'm out of the way, I'm not trying to meet edge to edge, because if he's also using an edged weapon, that's not going to be great news for either of our blades, right? Blades probably going to break, shatter, not fun. Right? When that comes in, if I'm able to get this, then yes, that might be my gunting, right? I want to go for the weapon, for the hand, for the flesh with my metal. Now, when that's coming in here, right, I'm going to deflect. Okay? And you'll notice I'm not hitting edge. I'm probably going to go in somewhere like this, where I'm trying to meet it either with the 45 degree of the spine, or somewhere flat, probably not the flat, but I'm trying to like search it out. And you recognize this movement. This movement can also go into that. So this movement where I'm deflecting, right, and I'm hitting that. Now when I come to attack him, when I'm hitting, this is also my Santikan. And so here. This deflection of the movement with the leading edge, with the false edge, with the spine, that's I think where the Santikan is. This deflection here is I think where the Santikan is. On this side, now one thing interesting, and I think it's the specifics like this that I really enjoy, and that really helps things fall into place, is that when I'm doing my gunting on this side, the opening gunting, tone mel is very specific. This is not the same as this. Yeah, so this one is not the same as this one. In fact, I have in my notes, so if I'm wrong, Royce, I know you'll correct me. Please do. Royce is great. Represents tone mel. I forgot where you live now. But, okay, so here, right, it's always said, the hand that's doing the umbrella, in that move, the hand that's doing the umbrella, whether it's this umbrella, that hand is always on the inside, right? So here, with this, it's on the inside, right? This on the inside. For this side, it's also supposed to be on the inside. Now, the reason I think it's supposed to be on the reason I think it's supposed to be on the inside is because I think I can use this to deflect. I don't think I'm going to be hitting it exactly with my edge, but I think I can use it to deflect. Almost like I'm doing high-line thrust. Almost like I'm doing this, like a paawas, but it's not a paawas. It's still coming from my umbrella. So I think it's really in those nuances where we see whether a Santikan manifests or not. That's my understanding. So we have this hit. If I'm hitting the weapon, right, then I'm hitting it. This is my Santikan. Hit. If I'm hitting with the bag and I'm deflecting this, that's my Santikan, right? So even if it's an upward smash, so let's say I go here, boom, and this is of course for my doche method of contradas. So if I'm hitting this and smashing the hand, the wrist, the elbow, or if I'm going in as with the siete-teros, the 7th strike one, where I'm going here, right, boom, straight up, right? That's also my Santikan, right? Thank you, Patch, for that one, right? That's also the Santikan, and it's this deflection, is moving out of the way, right? And that striking a flip. I suppose if I had to train it in that sort of old school way, I would take 2 pieces of flint and put them, tie them to my hands, so that every time I do something, it creates a forest fire somewhere. Only you can stop forest fires. Okay. Anyway, so I think that is where the Santikan is for me, or how I'll explain it. It's in that deflection. Right? It's in that, using that sort of like glancing force to disperse the energy that's coming in here. And then I can continue. Now, here is where I go into why I think the Santikan is, why we recognize it as traverse and luwak, right? So within we have our traverse and we have our luwak. Now, based on what I've learned from a lot of different instructors, I realized that the same move or similar moves can have different names depending on which subsystem they're taken from. So, from my understanding, right, this is more of a doche methodos thing, in the sense that in doche methodos you had clear subsystems. Okay, I'm learning the gaso tertia, I'm learning contradas, I'm learning recontras, and these had very clear subsystems. And within those subsystems, you have same move, right? The elements, the sort of like atoms of Pakiti were the same, but they come in differently. So I think that when we learn traverse, when we learn the luwak, when we learn the reverse traverse or the pendulum, we are learning that within the subsystem of contra tertia dublados. Right? So we are learning that within the subsystem of contra tertia dublados. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Santikan is a meta concept or a meta principle that in the context of contra tertia dublados, you will see most frequently within the traverse movement. So yes, this is a traverse, right? But of course, when I do this as my traverse, when I'm attacking here, this is also girada, right? When I do this as my reverse traverse, right? Or when I do this as my luwak. Sorry, I think this is todo, this is girada. So when I do this, yes, my bad, right? Traverse. When I go on traverse, this is on my todo line, right? Whether it's slash slash or slash slash. When I go in either as a reverse traverse or as a luwak, right? When it's coming in, and then when I'm going here on my girada line, that is still fuego todo, fuego girada. It is also because now I'm using that luwak, which is something we learned in, which is something that's supposed to be within contra tertia dublados. It is also Santikan. So when it's coming in, that deflection, I'm using that principle of Santikan, which is the principle of that clash, which in this context manifest as something we call and I think that's going to be true for almost when we apply Santikan in our guntings, in our umbrellas, even in our in puntadas, right? So when that angle is coming in, for example, when I think of it as doing my puntadas, that's still the same thing. I'm still deflecting his weapon with a part of my weapon, and in this case, very clearly with the false edge, with the spine. And it's right to call it Santikan. And it's also right to call it whatever else it might be called in whichever subsystem we might be training at that point. So that's probably a bit rambly, and I think ultimately this is my current understanding of Santikan. The deflection, that flint aspect of it, that deflection are probably the things that make it a Santikan, right? So if I'm doing a direct contact where it's just edge to edge for both, on sticks it's okay, obviously, but then when I'm going in here, right, if it's coming in behind, I'm just not going to get that. Because I'm not deflecting his weapon, I'm just like cutting his arm off. I don't think that counts as Santikan, right? So, yeah, so this is my Santikan. When the thrust comes in, right, that's also my Santikan. So yeah, it's one of those things that I think I need to understand it as always coming back to that action of the flint stone and how you create fire using flint stones. You strike them against each other, but you don't strike them like into each other. Okay? So yeah, so all thoughts, criticisms, comments are welcome. And I definitely want to know, how people are approaching this, what they're thinking of.